Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Joseph. I'm the president of the Detroit chapter of CBTU, the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, and we are really excited with this another political action workshop program. Know before you go, vote. And we have some very, very special people joining us tonight. I'm really excited. They are two dynamic political pundits, and they know what they're talking about. And they're going to analyze the issues and share it with us tonight. So joining us, and we just had a great conversation before we went on the air, Miss Amy Lange. She is an Emmy Award-winning journalist and reporter and anchor with Fox 2 News here in the Detroit area. And CBTU Detroit wants you to know how much we appreciate you being here tonight. Now, she has covered stories from, the Supreme Court on same-sex marriage, Flint water crisis, as well as things happening in Haiti, where she won some Emmys, and of course, her passion for helping people out, especially the homeless folk. And we just appreciate her share. She's been reporting the fact and chronicling history for many, many years. And then my brother, Mr. Heaster Wheeler. He is, what can you say about Heaster Wheeler? Advocacy, leadership, and community engagement. All those words come to mind when I think of Mr. Heaster Wheeler. He has served as an assistant Secretary of State here in Michigan, where he championed Michigan's voting rights as a chief election officer. He's been employed in many positions, but you need to understand he's been executive director of NAACP. He's been a chief innovative officer of Black Family Development. He's just done a lot of stuff, Wayne County executive. But he didn't just go to work, everybody. He went to serve. And he's just one of our great Americans that we are wonderfully mentors young people. He serves on a lot of political action committees. And he's also a master mason. So you didn't know I knew that with the Prince Hall Live. So welcome both of our guests. Hi, Amy.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it. Great to see you. Great to be with Heaster Wheeler, who I admire and respect an awful lot, as do you. And so just happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, and hello, Mr. Heaster Wheeler.
Thank you, Michael Joseph, Mr. President of CBTU, and special thanks to you, Amy Lange, for just being who you are. And it is my pleasure to be a part of this discussion with both of you.
And the key to all of this tonight is our second vice president of the Detroit chapter of CBTU, Mr. Phil Holyfield, who is our engineer and co-producer. So let's get right to it.
My man.
Hey, Phil. We want to talk about the proposals, Proposal 1, Proposal 2, and Proposal 3. Let's start out with Proposal 1. And what that proposal simply says, everyone, is a proposal to amend the state constitution to require annual public financial disclosures reports by legislators and other state offices, and change state legislator term limits to 12 total years in this legislature. So a yes vote would change the way business is done. Let me ask you, I'll start out with you, Heaster. What do you think about this proposal? Is this something that's needed?
Yeah, let me suggest this also. First of all, again, let me say thank you for hosting such an important conversation. And most political pundits and most social justice experts will tell you that every effort matters. So all of these conversations add up to a very, very educated populace. So thank you for hosting this. There's so many issues on the ballot. Police reform is on the ballot. Voting rights are on the ballot. Racism is on the ballot. Affordable housing is on the ballot. I have not personally missed an election since I was 18. And what I've learned from my own experiences and what I've learned through research, and I just want to make this specific point, that if young people in particular vote at the very first or second opportunity they have to vote, they become voters for life. Just record that into your consciousness. That's why we have to continue to educate. All three of these proposals are especially significant for a lot of different reasons. I don't know if you tell people how to vote, but I do.
You and Amy can tell them how to vote, but we're here just to present the information to them so they can be knowing before they go and vote. So let me ask you about the proposal. Now, the proposal, people vote yes, or they can vote no, but if you voted yes, it requires the members of the legislature, the governor, the lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, they'd have to file annual public financial disclosure reports. And in Michigan, we have been doing that. That includes their assets, their liabilities, and what I think is very important, that's just my opinion, is about their future employment arrangements and travel. Is that something that we need?
Yeah, I think we absolutely need it, and I'll be quiet, Amy, and let you talk. But I think only the state of Idaho is the only other state in
Yes.
all
Idaho.
of 50 states that don't require transparency. And I think it's important that Michigan move from the bottom to the top. We could go from worst to first with proposals like this. So I am very definitely a supporter of this. The only unreadiness I have, I'm not a proponent of term limits. That's the only unreadiness I have. I don't like the fact that the total number of years a person can serve is reduced from 14 to 12. But the transparency part of this particular proposal is so significant. I'm a yes vote.
Okay, Amy, your thoughts on this proposal?
Well, I can't tell you how to vote because as a journalist, I'm just supposed to, bring you information. But I do think that there are some really important elements to this. I think that as voters from whatever party, I think that you expect transparency from your elected officials, from your leaders. I think you want to know if there's a conflict of interest. You want to know if they're going to be serving something other than you, a particular business interest or something of that nature. So I think that, that voters should look very closely at this. There's a lot to it, but it is, at its heart, I think, an effort to encourage and not just encourage, but to demand transparency of our leaders. And I think that that's something we all should expect of the people who are supposed to be working for us, especially when we're the ones who vote them into office.
Absolutely.
Interesting you said that because the legislator changed it. It was even had more stringent applications about income reporting, and they kind of like loosened that up a little bit, And going back to you, Hess, you were talking about the term limits because Michigan accepted term back in 1992 when we voted for the term limits. I think the Headley Amendment it was called. So you and I'm going to get both of your opinions. Do you think term limits are an effective way? Because people are talking about, and people who are against this proposal talk about career politicians, and they're saying that we want fresh blood. What are your thoughts on that, Amy?
Yeah, I've worked in and out of the legislature here in Michigan for over 30 years. I've worked on political staff. I've been a lobbyist for both the phone company and a lobbyist for Detroit Public Schools. So I've had the unique and special opportunity to interact with legislators for, like I said, for over 30 years now. I was in Lansing on the day they passed term limits. But I think every election is an opportunity to engage in term limits. I'm not stuck on titles like career politicians. I think every 2 years or every 4 years, you have an opportunity to do what you think is in your best interest. There is value, just like the United States Congress. The single most significant issue if you serve in Congress is seniority. You won't have the opportunity to build seniority in legislatures that subscribe to term limits. So I'm not a big proponent of term limits. I'd rather educate voters in different ways, and I'd rather politicians come to the voters every year and defend or promote their accomplishments and defend their right to be re-elected.
Amy, your thoughts? We're going to move to the next proposal, but your thoughts?
Well, I think that this is one that voters have to, seriously look at and say, do I have an opinion about career politicians? Do I think that I want to see fresh blood in there? Do I think that maybe people who are there too long serve the same interests over and over, whereas someone else might be able to relate to, maybe it's a younger audience or what have you. I think we see right now, with Alyssa Slotkin saying, that there needs to be a lot of new leadership from, the president to Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she has been quite vocal about wanting to see people who are younger, maybe people who are from the Midwest, just have a different representation. So I think that that's an issue for voters to kind of do a little soul searching on what they believe. And I think that you have to look at each of these proposals and say, well, there's some of it that I like. Maybe there's some of it I don't like. What do I think is more important? So for someone, it might be the fact that that transparency really matters. And even though they're not wild about term limits, as Heaster is saying, he's not. I think he's swayed by the fact that people would have to be transparent in their business dealings and their earnings, et cetera. So I think that these are all issues where you kind of have to look at it, think about it, and that's why it's really great to have these types of discussions so that people are doing that before they go. It's
Go before
difficult.
they go.
Yes, it is difficult to walk in there and look at something for the first time and go, gosh, how should I vote on this? So it's so important to research beforehand. That's one of the things that's so wonderful about absentee voting, is that you can take your time.
Yes.
You can look at something and say, gosh, I don't actually know who these people are. Let me go and do some research.
That's right.
So I think that that's a key part of this. So definitely try and give it a good read. I think we're giving it a good little sort of rundown for voters right now. And do some soul searching and see what you think and what's most important to you about what this would require of our elected officials.
No, you're absolutely right. And this is much better, everybody, than TV commercials that don't tell you the truth. So we will. So to recap, Proposal 1 very basically will offer transparency for anyone that's in office: lieutenant governor, governor, secretary of state, legislatures. Also take the term from 12 years to 14 years, and it'd be a combination of serving in the state senate or sitting in the rep. And one of the key ones that I personally I looked at is that they'd have to let you know about their possible employment, so we can find out what the lobbyists are really doing. So look at that proposal and make your decision. And we're going to segue into what Amy was just talking about when you go, it's the actual proposal number 2 about transparency in the elections. I know Hester's going to tear this up because So Proposal 2, and by the way, your colleague Amy was on today. Charlie, I love Charlie Langston. He was discussing that on your morning program. So Proposal 2, everybody, is about transparency in our elections. It simply is the official language. Thank you, Phil, for showing everybody. A proposal to amend the state constitution to add provisions regarding the election. And simply a yes vote would recognize the fundamental right to vote without arresting conduct, require military overseas ballot be counted and postmarked by election day. Folks that want to come vote, don't have their ID, can still vote with a signed statement. And they also, once you sign up for absentee ballot, you don't have to worry about signing up for it again. Provide that only elected election officials may conduct post-election audits. That's a good one, y'all. And then also 9 days of early voting would happen. So instead of us focusing on election day, November 8th, which is coming up very shortly, you'd have 9 days to go vote. And as well as they would put drop boxes in areas that would be paid for the state, as well as paying for your postage for your absentee ballot. So let's get right into that. And Hester, you being a former assistant secretary of state, what do you think about that proposal?
Yeah, let me frame it in a different way. Also, I'm currently reading a book by Isabel Wilkerson entitled "Cast," and she talks about toxins in the permafrost and how just beneath the Earth's surface are various toxins. Obviously, the most recent is COVID-19 or the coronavirus, but hatred is a toxin. Racism is a toxin. Violence is a toxin. And while many of us in the civil rights and social justice movement, we've been fighting most of our lives to keep those toxins locked into the permafrost. But tension, climate change, global warming, they can release those toxins. And we're living in a moment now where we recognize that many of those toxins have never really gone away. We had just pushed them into the permafrost. So hatred is back. It's alive and well in America. Racism is back. Violence is back. Our children are afraid. Anybody that has a young person in school has to feel their fear. Anybody that would suppress voting, in my opinion, subscribes to some level of racism. And I recognize that many whites don't like to be accused of racism, but it was Black voters, it was Black people that were subject to how many bubbles are in a bar of soap. It was Black people in the South in particular who were subject to literacy tests. Why would we go backwards? Why do we need to concrete in the Michigan Constitution something as progressive and as necessary and as fundamental to the American experience as voting rights? So this is a great proposal. It's the right thing. It's so very necessary, but it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. We fought 2018, we passed new voting rights here in Michigan. No excuse absentee voting, same day voter registration, automatic voter registration. That's progressive. We should warn our young people. We should concrete in statute for middle school and high school students to have mock elections. We should concrete in statute that when a young person graduates high school, they get their voter registration. You should get your high school diploma and your voter registration card at the very same time. But you got some mean-spirited people who want to take us backwards. I am saying we can rise above the Mississippi status. Michigan does not have to be the Mississippi of the North. Let's do the right thing and let's concrete this proposal into the Michigan Constitution.
Amy, you hear Hester's passion about that. What say you, from a reporter's standpoint, because you've seen it from a different perspective?
Well, I think we've certainly seen incidents, as Hester's alluding to, in other states that have been quite aggressive with regards to limiting voting, which obviously for everyone is your right and your duty as an American, right? So it's something that is really at the core of our sort of existence and our citizenship. So in terms of wanting to be able to vote, everyone we hope wants to do it, and everyone who wants to do it should be able to do it. I think what is key in this proposal is the 9 days of early voting. Many states who are not very progressive have early voting. It's strange to me that it has taken this long for Michigan to allow its citizens to do that. So many people work. They may not be able to get to the polls on that day. They may have transportation issues. And these things are urban, rural. These types of things affect all kinds of people. And so we should want everyone from every walk of life to be able to vote and to make that process easier. Maybe you're disabled, maybe you have kids, you can't find a babysitter. There are many, many reasons people may not be able to get there that day. And while absentee voting is, really available all the time, a lot of people don't realize that you can go in and say, look, I'm not going to be there that day. I'd like to cast my ballot right now. A lot of people feel more comfortable doing their voting in person. They feel a little, just nervous about, filling something out or sending it in, or, so I think to give people the confidence that their vote matters, that their vote counts. I think this is an important effort to say, look, you have several days that you can do this. So please come at your leisure, come when it works for you, and cast that ballot. Voting should be something that we encourage every single person who is eligible to do. And so, I think as Hester is saying, it's unfortunate that we should have to codify this into our Constitution. This should be a no-brainer in terms of getting people out to vote. I think people who are maybe unsure of this one would cite maybe they have concerns about security and the drop boxes and things like that. But I think there's a lot in this particular proposal that seeks to address that. Our clerks are very conscientious people. They are not running for those positions because they don't care. This is an important, elections are very important to them, and they should be to all of us. So I think when voters look at Proposal 2, there's a lot in there, but definitely check out that summary and the various things that would be, protected and afforded to the electorate. And I think it's something that seems to, in the polling, have a lot of support, and we'll see on election day.
But there are also some people who are not for this. And going back what Hester was saying, Holyfield, again, our second vice president, he said, hey, we need to bring civics back in the classroom. But there's some misinformation that's out there, everybody. For example, there are people who are sending texts and emails and TV commercials saying that felons would be able to vote. That's not true. A felon would not be able to vote. But Hester, if someone is going through trial or has been arrested, they still can vote, right?
That's absolutely true. And thanks for bringing that up. The fact is, as long as you are not serving time behind bars on election day. Your right to vote is automatic. So you cannot vote while you're actually serving time. You can vote if you're on probation or parole, but if you're literally physically serving time on election day, you cannot vote. Otherwise, your right to vote is protected and should be respected. It's interesting you bring this up too, because as Assistant Secretary of State, there's several things I'm particularly proud of. I had the unique opportunity to serve alongside Jocelyn Benson, who is absolutely dynamic. I mean, she's a mover and shaker. She makes a lot of good things happen. We were able to improve upon a policy. Everybody that returns from a Michigan prison for the first time in Michigan history will now have a state ID. They'll have a current voter registration card or a driver's license. We just tweaked some policies. We had meetings with the Michigan Department of State and the Michigan Department of Corrections. That's how important that particular constituency. And on average, some 8,000 plus people leave Michigan prisons every year and return to their homes and to their respective communities. I think very often we marginalize and stigmatize people who have had some unfortunate experience with the criminal justice experience. And I think there's so many ways to racialize those disparities. African Americans in particular are 14% of the population, 25% of the military, 35% of the front line, but nearly 40 to 50% of most every prison in America is filled with African Americans. And the fact is, we know that the number one crime in America is not committed by Black folk. The number one crime in America is drunk driving. 85% of the culprits are white males. If jails and prisons were a reflection of criminal activity, jails and prisons would be filled with white males. So I'm saying we've got a long ways to go. We've made some significant progress, obviously, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, the Community Reinvestment Act, but we're not there yet. So it is what it is, and we got to be honest. And you can't address hatred if you don't address racism. You can't address violence if you don't address hatred and racism. And you cannot live that light if we don't. If we cannot expect our children, our young people, to enjoy all of the benefits of the sunshine if we don't live the light and be honest and tell the truth
and be the light. But I'm gonna flip this to Amy, because has seen all these positive things in the proposal, but there's a cost involved. When you say 9 days early voting, who's going to pay for that? You know, we're talking about something like $8 million. The new deposit boxes, that's another $3.2 million. Upgrade the current boxes that we have. Pay for the postage. Is it worth it? Amy, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that there's that provision in there about donating, and I'm assuming
I'm going to talk about that too.
Probably, explain that.
Confused about that too.
The idea being that it might take more than what is allocated, I guess, to make this happen, and so that'll be an interesting part of this. I mean, if we're going to put it in the Constitution, then we got to figure out a way to pay for it, right? So I mean, exactly how that's going to happen, I'm not sure, but I suppose if the voters say we demand it, then somehow the state's going to figure out how to make it happen. And hopefully, because obviously this is, something that impacts, very large municipalities and very small ones as well.
How are they going to pay for the small communities in the rural areas? And Heaster, she brought up a good point. A lot of folk may not know this, but in this proposal, private money can be donated to clerks to pay for their election. So it could be a conservative group. Oh, by the way, can't be a foreign entity making a contribution, and they have to say who they are doing it, but it can still be done. So that means Ms. DeVos wants to make a contribution, she can, and there's nothing wrong with it, or McDonald's or CBTU.
Yeah, I think and thanks for that reference, Amy. In 2020, we were beneficiaries of a lot of foundation dollars and charitable dollars and even corporate dollars that support fair and open elections, that support improving voter education initiatives, even ballot boxes. Some of you may remember the reference to Zuckerberg dollars, because Zuckerberg from Facebook, he supported improving the process and he made financial resources available. I support what I do know, having worked in and around the legislature for a lot of years, is that budget is always about priorities. It is rarely about a financial crisis. It's about what you prioritize. And if we care about the American dream becoming a reality, if we care about good citizenship, if we care about improving civic participation, if we care about an educated electorate, then this to me is the kind of priority that we should find the money to fund.
And let's clear up something. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Amy.
Well, I was just going to say, I think to Hester's point, political will is what we lack in so many areas, right?
That's
It's not the dollars, it's the
exactly
political
right.
will. It's determining and what's important and prioritizing. And so, I think that one of the really interesting things about proposals and constitutional amendments is that it really it seems to me to be democracy in action, where we're asking the people to make these decisions, to say what's important to them,
Yes.
as opposed to the politicians that we elect, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this really comes down to the voters in the most basic way that it possibly can. And so, it really, when we talk about every vote counts, this is where we kind of see that in action.
And that's why.
For everybody, to recap on proposal 2, you have 9 days of early voting. Military people overseas, as long as their ballots get in by election day, their votes will count. Once you apply for absentee ballot, you don't have to apply for it again. You get your ballot, you will get pre-postage that's paid for. Drop boxes will be in municipalities and it will be paid for again by the state. And there will be no harassing of people going in to vote. The border canvassers cannot do what they tried to do.
That's right.
Deal with the count. There's a key thing I want both of you to talk about that a lot of people are getting misinformation. A lot of people who are against proposal 2 and other voting rights around America, they always say this: why do they not need an ID to vote? So what does the proposal says? It says if you don't have an ID, you still can vote. Your thoughts?
Well, this is something that people have been able to do for a very long time. This is not new. Maybe it's just codifying it in this particular proposal, but people who have forgotten their ID, or they don't have the proper one that's needed. Maybe maybe they didn't get it renewed. Maybe they never had it. They have always been able to go ahead and sign a provisional ballot, and then there's an affidavit that says I am who I say I am, and so I think there's this real misconception about, and it always comes down to this idea of voter fraud, and no one wants voter fraud, right? Everyone wants the people voting who should be voting, and so I think there's this sort of scary idea out there that somebody who is not allowed to vote is just going to come up and say they are this person, they're going to sign this, and it automatically is going to be a fraudulent vote. I don't think that is the case. I'm sure Hester can speak to it to more than I can, but it seems to me that this has been allowed for a long time, and it's been really mischaracterized in terms of what it is.
So Hester, I think
I think you make a good point, Amy. There are some racially disparate impacts when you demand voter ID. Poor people tend not to have the same kind of identification. Hundreds of thousands of African Americans in Michigan versus any other community are without state ID or a driver's license. We've had laws that actually strip driver's license out of people's hands for a variety of things. 79,000. We just helped restore driver's licenses to 79,000 Detroiters because they could not afford court costs. If you're poor in America, you pay a different penalty than folk who have money, who can pay their fines on time. So there are a lot of reasons that poor people and communities of color and poorly educated people might not have a photo ID. We've sort of racialized it, and lots of the voter suppression initiatives. There's one piece of legislation in that first batch of 39 bills that said churches could no longer be used as polling places, and over 50% of the polling places in African American communities are churches. So that's racially disparate. If you remember all those militants and activists and mean-spirited people on election night in November 2020. They came to Detroit. There's no evidence of voter fraud. We, in fact, hosted over 200 audits across this state. There's no evidence of voter fraud, but there were more mistakes in Livonia than Detroit. But nobody went to Livonia to look over the shoulders of the people counting those particular ballots. And one last thing we have to acknowledge is a part of this voter suppression moment. It has everything to do with Black voter turnout. There were 9 battleground states. You remember in Georgia, we waited for Atlanta. In Philadelphia, we waited for Pittsburgh. In Pennsylvania, we waited for Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. In Ohio, we waited for Cincinnati and Cleveland. And Wisconsin, we waited for Milwaukee. And you know what happened here in Michigan. We waited for Detroit, right? And the fact is 250,000 Detroiters went to the poll in November of 2020. Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris won by 154,000 votes. So what that says is that the Black vote in Detroit delivered the margin of victory. And so what you are seeing is a backlash. There's an effort to suppress the African-American vote. And in many ways, African-American voters deserve a lot more credit than they take. It was the African-American voters that really helped save this democracy by voting in significant numbers. So I think what you see, this photo ID, it's a ruse for voter suppression. It's another tactic. Okay. And there are a lot of things that are more important than voting where you don't need an ID.
Yeah, well, some people can get a gun with an ID in Texas, but talk about that. And again, your point of the Detroit, especially African-American women, say democracy in America. The last proposal is a really touchy one with a lot of people. And one thing we try to say, don't use the word abortion. It's about reproductive rights, but people will do that. So again, everybody, Amy and Heaster are not talking about their personal feelings on that. We're talking about the proposal. So proposal 3. There's a proposal to amend the state constitution to establish new individual rights to reproductive freedom, including the right to make all decisions about pregnancy and abortion, to allow the state to regulate abortion in some cases and forbid prosecution of individuals exercising the established right. Let's talk about proposal 3. That's the hot button one that a lot of folk talking about, and it's amazing because people are using it as a political issue to bring people out to vote. It's getting more push than sometimes the economy, which people most times people vote when they're mad. Some issue. I got to get through this, but this one really is touching a lot of people. Let's talk about the political aspects of it before we get into the actual proposal. What do you guys think about how Democrats are using it? How the Republicans are running away from it. One Republican candidate had it on his website that he was against it, and then when he saw the lady Lange, he took it totally off his campaign website. What do you guys think about the political fallout from this?
Heaster, you want to take that one?
I'll say this. The fact is, this particular proposal is driving people to the polls in some significant ways. It's an easy decision for me and people in my circle. It's interesting that people would be opposed to choice, and many of the same people that are opposed to choice are also opposed to breakfast program for poor people. So you don't want to stop. You want to intervene before a human being gets into the world, but once the individual gets here, you don't want to provide support they need to create that pathway out of poverty. It is absolutely a political issue. It will drive voter participation. I think Black Lives Matter, COVID, and no excuse absentee voting were the conversions that drove people to the polls 2 years ago. I think proposal 3 is that Black Lives Matter moment. And women and men who have wives, men who have daughters will participate in this process in a much more significant way, because I don't think you have the right to tell me if I'm a cancer patient, you don't have the right to tell me I can't choose chemo. How are you going to control what I choose to do with my body? This is an easy issue for me.
And Amy, from a woman's perspective, when you're out there talking to the people, it's totally different if Heaster and I are talking about it. Your thoughts?
Well, certainly, I think women are very passionate about this. I think it has galvanized a lot of people. You know, as the reproductive freedom for all petitions were going out, you know, they collected almost 1 million signatures. They turned in, I think, 750,000 signatures. So that's a lot of support. And those petitions and those signatures, they came from every county. So it shows you that there was and is support for this. Once again, it's going to determine, you know, who actually gets out there to vote. I think that you see, you sort of asked like politically, you know, obviously Democrats are, you know, saying, you know, we have to embrace this. This is a women's rights issue, a body autonomy, healthcare issue.
Yes.
I think that you see, ironically, the other side also sort of using some of the similar language, because polling shows there is a lot of support for abortion rights. What there's less support for is late-term abortions and things of
Yes.
that nature. So I think what you see with certainly the vote no on proposal 3 commercials, which are just on our air constantly. Now, granted, the other side has got them out there too, but there seems to be a lot of money being pumped in to this vote no on 3 effort. And you notice that those commercials are not saying abortion is wrong. They are saying, oh, this would allow my daughter to not have parental consent. This would allow a dentist to perform an abortion. This would allow a baby to be aborted at the very last minute before birth. So using these sort of really extreme ideas that they are reading into the language of this, they're not saying abortion is wrong, but that is what they believe. I mean, that's what I'm gathering when I talk to Right to Life, the Catholic Church. I mean, because I'm interviewing both sides on this, right? Because there's two very important sides to this. So what they feel and then what those ads are saying are two different things. So I think that when you see the sort of strategy of all of it, it's very interesting because you know there's one central message behind what they believe, that it's wrong, that abortion is flat out wrong, but that will not fly with many voters. And so I think they are hoping and counting on this idea of their tagline, you know, too confusing, too extreme, I think is what they say in all their commercials. And they're hoping that that is going to be enough to dissuade voters. I think the polling shows otherwise, but again, this comes down to who comes out to vote. And so whatever way you feel, you got to cast that ballot. You know, that is the main thing throughout all of these proposals, and everything that's on this ballot is, you know, if you feel passionately about it, you gotta fill in that bubble.
Well, Amy, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the purpose of this program, because there's so much confusion out there and misinformation delivered. Misinformation. For example, let's say the anti-abortion opponents of this say proposal 3 was going to affect 41 state laws. Masseuse will be given abortions. There'll be unsanitary places. Doctors can't be sued, and none of that is true. The about the children, your teenager wouldn't have to talk to you for parental consent. None of that is true, and we need it. But no matter what happens with proposal 3, everybody, there are going to be a lot of court challenges. Lawyers are going to make a lot of money, because no matter if it's voted for or if it's voted down, like I said, the misinformation and that. But beyond that, there's a little agreement on the wide-ranging effects of this amendment, because not only we're talking about from the health of a mother and those decisions, and I won't go on record saying I have no business telling a woman what to do with her body, and I support women in this endeavor to make their choice about medical. But politically, the country is looking at Michigan. They're looking at this, just like with Kansas City and with Kansas. What say you? Do you think this will keep us back on the political map?
I think it's especially significant. I think Michigan will be pretty prominent on the political map for some years to come. We're fairly evenly divided, believe it or not, based on some research where, you know, it's there are a fair number of Democrats, a fair number of Republicans, and a fair number of independents. So that keeps us on the radar because independents can go both ways. I don't know that this is as partisan as some people want it to be. This is personal. And even conservatives, they have daughters and wives and women in their lives that they want that choice to be afforded. So, yeah, I think Michigan's going to be on the map. We've got a lot of reasons. I mean, we're the auto industry, we're the home to Motown. People will pay attention to us for a long time. We have an opportunity to be the leader.
We have two women running for governor.
That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. We've got 3 women at the top of the ticket. That's a big deal.
That's huge. Well,
Yeah,
you know,
blue wave.
I'm sorry.
No,
ahead,
I was
Amy.
just saying that blue wave, you know, and you know, we'll see if the voters vote them in again. But certainly that ticket is very female forward, and so I think that we've seen them certainly very vocal about these issues that you know, they're not just women's issues. They're issues that everyone should be
family
concerned
issues.
about.
That's exactly right. Thanks.
Truly family values. So listen, we're at the end of the program. I really enjoyed this conversation with you all, and I hope all of you have enjoyed the conversation because, again, we're here to provide information. CBTU Detroit says no before you go. We encourage all of you to go and vote. Then over 150,000 people in Michigan have already voted through absentee ballots. Make sure you're one of them. We can increase that number. We'll be in the community, CBTU. We're going to be out there giving away gas, hot dogs, and we might see me out there dancing to get you to register and vote. But the most important thing about being very serious, like what Mr. Heaster Wheeler said and what Ms. Amy Lange said, this is your right to vote. Exercise it. Don't waste that power. And again, I want to thank you, Amy, so much. Thank you so much for
Thanks for having me. It's been a joy.
And Heaster, this is your second time, man. I guess I'm going to have to make you a co-host.
Don't hesitate. I believe service is the price we pay for the space we occupy, and that's my highest commitment. So I'm happy to be a part of it. Continue to do what you do and do it well. Did I see an announcement where Michael Joseph said she said yes? Did I see that somewhere?
Let me tell you that. Thanks for doing that. You know, I never talk about my personal life, but let me tell you about my personal life. So what he's talking about, Amy, on my Facebook page, I said she said yes, and just had a picture of myself, and I got 20 million people saying, "Oh, you're getting married," and no, she said yes to, because no one ever asked the question. She said yes to getting self-examinations, to get a mammogram, to tell her friends to go get checked out.
Okay.
Or if they have it in their family to get checked out. So all my sisters out there and men get breast cancer as well. Please say yes to your health, self-examination, mammogram. Thanks for letting me get a chance to say that, Heaster.
Well, I was just prepared to say congratulations. You owe a lot of people a big explanation.
I understand. One day, Heaster, one day.
Yes, sir.
We'll get there. But before I go, I want to give you both an opportunity for a closing statement. Amy?
Well, again, I would just say that I think that these are really important issues that are up to us, all of us, to decide. They're interesting in the sense that they really are a direct reflection of the vote, the people's vote, versus, you know, how elections generally work and the presidential and this, you know, it's all gets, you know, thrown into, you know, this basket, and this is how many people. This is really something that we can truly look at and say, you know, we the people decided these.
I love it. Michael Joseph, let me first of all say thank you again, and what a pleasure to work with Amy Lange. You know, a brother like me from Linwood has arrived when I'm on the same show with Amy Lange, our local celebrity television anchor. I really appreciate
Emmy award-winning journalist.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
But as it relates to voting, this is not politics as usual. I started off by saying there are a lot of other issues on this particular ballot, democracy and equality on the ballot. I also said earlier that if we want our children to enjoy all of the benefits of the sunshine, we have some extra responsibility to walk in the light. Tell the truth, you walk in the light. I encourage people to vote, you walk in the light. Do the right thing, get involved, you walk in the light. take your souls to the polls. Thank you.
And
Thank
take
you
your
so
kids
much.
with you to the polls.
And take your
There
kids
you
with
go.
you. That's
Take
There
your
you
kids
go.
to the polls so they can start learning this early. Sit down at your kitchen table and fill out your absentee ballot with them. Let them ask some questions and have good answers.
Or sit down with your grandma.
That's
Great
right.
advice.
Amy Lange, Fox 2, thank you so much. Heaster Wheeler, man of the season, thank you again so much. Phil
Appreciate
Holyfield, second vice president of Detroit chapter CBTU, thank you for being here. But most importantly, thank you for watching. We hope this has been a service to you, and we'll know it because we know you're gonna know before you go and vote. Thank you, everybody.
Amen.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.